Well, hello everybody, and once again I'm bringing you another GIMP tutorial. And in this one we're going to cover several things. We're going to cover how to change this photograph that I took of my daughter at the Freedom Summer Memorial at Miami University. And I changed it from, kind of a nice little picture into something that's almost nostalgic and hauntingly beautiful, I think. And you can see now that I changed it to a black and white photograph with just a touch of color in it. The ramifications I think are obvious. A glimpse from the past into the future, future into the past, however you want to interpret it. But what I want to do is show you several techniques that you can utilize with the GIMP to make this transition from a photograph that you've taken to a piece of art that you've put in heart and soul into. So first of all, let's take a look at this picture. I noticed that there's quite a bit in there that's not needed. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my selection tool, feather the edges a little bit. I think it's about 15, and I'm just going to select the area that I want the picture to be. I'm just going to select the parameters. And so after I get my selection, I will go up here to the image tool in a second, and I will fit the image to the crop once I get the crop where I want it to be. And that's coming, I promise. Right about there. So in my mind I want to basically go down to the bottom of my daughter's boots and make sure that her whole body is included in the photograph. But I don't want any of the white pole or the gray pole included, so I'm going to crop to the selection. Now you can see I've got a nice little crop there that just includes the parts of the picture that are pertinent. So now I'm going to zoom in, because if you notice, I've got on the Freedom Summer sign there's a white State of Ohio bicentennial button. And in my mind that just kind of takes away from the ambiance of the photograph, so I want that out of there. So using a clone tool, I'm going to take my clone tool, it's right there, and I'm going to just clone the pattern around that button over the button, and I'm just going to make that thing disappear. It's real easy to do. You hit your command button on a Mac, your control button on a Windows machine, and you click the area that you want to use as a pattern, and then you go down and you click and hold on the area that you want covered. And that's what I'm doing. You'll notice there's a little crease at the bottom, so get a little artistic when you go in with your clone tool. Try to mimic the seams that are there. And you'll notice that my clone tool is actually set to have a hard edge, and that shows up as hard edges in my clone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the clone tool to one that has a feathered edge, this one, and then I'm just going to go here and smooth those hard edges out with the clone tool that has a feathered edge. And you see, it's a real easy process. Once we zoom back out, you won't even be able to tell that there was ever anything there. It just makes it disappear very nicely. Just for those of you that don't really know how to use a clone tool, it's pretty easy to do. And there you can see that the white button that was really out of place has disappeared. Now I'm going to zoom in on Caitlin. And what I need to do with her is I need to outline her. And there's a couple of ways I can do this. Since I'm going to zoom in so closely and she's kind of in the background anyway, I can use the Smart Scissors. And Smart Scissors are basically a tool that create a selection by finding the most despairing line. So I'm just going to click around the edge of her body here. And every now and again it will choose the wrong line. You can go back and just pick the line and move it where you want, and just follow around the form with those Smart Scissors, like so. And I'll probably, yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to fast forward here and get us through this and start talking once I get her completely selected. As you can see, all I'm doing is going through and getting very close to the line that I want to follow, and Smart Scissors pretty much finds the most distinct line. Sometimes it misses it, in which case you have to go and adjust it a little bit, but you can adjust it just by touching the line. It's a very, very good tool. The other tool that you can use is your path tool, and you know, I'll show you that in another tutorial. I could have showed you that in this one, but Smart Scissors works very well for selecting a path. So if you're new to GIMP and you don't know how to use select a path, then you can use these Smart Scissors and it'll get you through. One thing that I'm doing here is I'm kind of cheating. I'm not going over every blade of grass. You actually can, if you're trying to do something perfectly, zoom in even farther and follow each and every blade of grass so that there's absolutely no discernible difference. I'm not that interested in doing that in this case. I'm just trying to give you a tutorial, and I don't want this to be hours long. Half an hour is pretty bad, but we're going to cover a lot in a half an hour, so don't be discouraged. If you're new to GIMP, you're wanting to learn some really cool photo graphic manipulations tricks, just watch this video from one end to the other. I think you'll be surprised at how much you can actually pick up just in this little bit that you will probably find useful when you yourself go to and do some photo editing. And again, I'm just following the lines. The Smart Scissors pretty much finds its way around. As long as you click just to the outside of what you want it to cling to, usually it finds it. You're going to see here in a second where it doesn't find it very well along her hair because there's such a slight difference. And again, you just pick that line up, pull it right over. Again, same thing, pick it up, pull it right over, pick it up, pull it right over. It'll find its path. And here we go, all the way around my kid. Don't know what that pause was about. I must have been taking a drink of coffee there. Okay, now you'll see a little circle appears. You just click within your path when that little circle appears. And what I'm doing is just copied Caitlin. I just made a copy of her. When I use the selection, I hit copy. Now I'm going to make another layer. And we're going to work with layers in this. And I'm going to paste a copy of Caitlin over Caitlin in this new layer. And the reason I'm going to do that is we're going to keep that copy of Caitlin red and then go ahead and anchor it there. And then we're going to change the color of the main one. And I just clicked the eye off, and what that did was basically make the copy of Caitlin disappear, so that when I change the color of the original base, it's not going to affect the copy of Caitlin that we made and pasted on the second layer. So I just sharpened it significantly, or I'm about to sharpen it significantly, so that when I do change the color to black and white, it shows up. And I think I'd take a sharpness of about 75 here. Okay, yeah, I double clicked that, so don't do that. I'm going to take a sharpness of about 75 here. 73. And yeah, I'm happy with that, so now I can change the color. And the only reason I did that was so that when we make it black and white, everything kind of stands out really nice and sharp. And remember, you really can't see the copy that we've made of her yet. And we're going to do quite a bit of tweaking to this. And the beautiful thing about GIMP is you can do a lot of tweaking. So I'm going to go to, once I get done scrolling through everything, I'm going to go to Desaturate, I think, is what I'm going to settle on. And then there's three options you can take when you desaturate a graphic. You can take lightness, luminosity, or average. And I like to run through them all, see which one captures my eye the best. So right now we're at lightness. Luminosity is a bit lighter, different contrast, and then average is a bit darker, it seems like, and a different contrast. And I think I like average, so we're going to stick with average on this one. So there we have it. The base layer has changed. Now I'm going to click the eyeball so that you can see what it's going to look like with the color graphic of Caitlin there. And there she is. And you'll notice that we've got a black and white print except for really our focal point, which is our young lady shooting with the camera who's in color. And if you think about the rule of thirds, you'll notice that I've set this up so that Caitlin is actually, the focus of the rule of thirds, but so then is Freedom Summer, depending on which aspect of this photograph you look at, either the new aspect with the color or the old aspect with the black and white. Again, this is just an attempt to be artistic and a method with which to artistically express yourself. Now what I'm doing now is I'm basically just playing around with some of the settings to see what kind of a feel I can create. I'm going to use photocopy, and I'm going to change the sharpness. I'm going to change the percent black. I'm going to change the percent white. Just see what it looks like, and if I like it any better with photocopy than I do than what I do by degenerating the color to change it to black and white. And I don't, if memory serves, when I put this together, I'm actually adding audio after the fact. I don't think I did enjoy this as much as the desaturation. And you'll see why here in a second. Yeah, it's almost too light, and it doesn't really have the pop and the effect that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to hit Command Z because I'm on a Mac. That almost looks gaudy and cheap at that point. Change it back to what it was, and now I'm going to work a little bit on changing Caitlin's color to be less vibrant and more hauntingly reminiscent. That's the term I want to use. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for hauntingly reminiscent. So let's see if I can achieve that. Oh, also, yeah, I'm going to add a bit of a vignette here. And I like to add vignettes manually. I don't like using a setting for them. And the way you do that is very simple. Is you just create another layer that you're going to change the opacity of. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to opacity, and I'm going to change it very far down so that I've got my shadow from that layer. And then I'm going to work with the ellipsis tool, and I'm going to work on cutting by changing the feathering of the edges. I'm going to work on cutting a vignette out of this. It's a manual way to create a vignette. As you can see, Caitlin stands out in very stark contrast to the black and white. And if you like that, if that's something that you would enjoy, when you're creating your photograph or your artistic expression, make it however you want. I'm just showing you the techniques that you can use to get there from here. So by all means, don't think you have to do it the way I do. And I play around with this quite a bit before I finally get it to where I want it to be. And one thing about the GIMP, especially when I'm working on a picture, I do all sorts of crazy things with this. I will get into these tools and I will yank and pull and twist and cut and change until I finally find something I want. And GIMP's a very powerful tool. GIMP is very, there are a lot of options with GIMP, especially when you get into making texts and fonts and things of that nature that you don't get in a lot of the other free programs. That's why I like it so much. As a matter of fact, I use GIMP in place of Photoshop, even though I have Photoshop. I don't like Photoshop nearly as well as I like the GIMP. And the GIMP's free, and all the plugins are free, and you can get different filters that are free, and you can write your own scripts if you know how. So I highly recommend this graphics program for graphic manipulation. It's just very powerful and very simple to use once you just get the basics. And again, now I'm changing the radius of my feathered edge. Again, I'm going to eventually end up with it at its maximum, and then I will change the opacity of the vignette that I've created in order to make it just give a hint of a vignette. And if this is getting boring to you, then I apologize. Fast forward about 3 or 4 minutes if you want. If you'll notice too, I've got the copy of my daughter's figure standing there taking a picture outside of the vignette, because I wanted her to not be part of the base picture. I wanted to create the illusion that she wasn't actually there, that either she was a glimpse of the future or the memorial was actually a memory that she was in the midst of. And that's what I had in mind. I think the end result is fairly decent. I'm happy with it anyway, and it's not going to do anything but grace my the screen of my iPad, or my iPad as a screensaver. So what I'm showing you here is something you could do to just make yourself happy. And I think this is the final shape that I finally ended up being highly contented with. And then I changed again the opacity to find the perfect vignette. Cut that out. We're at 100% feathering of the edges. And we'll change that opacity. And we'll change it again. It's still a little dark for a vignette. On black and white. And we'll change it again, I think. A wee bit more. And a whole lot more. It's still way too dark. But working with, taking photography I find very relaxing, and then working with my photographs, trying to create a stronger impression of what I'm feeling from the photograph. I find that relaxing as well, and therapeutic almost. I actually get in my zone doing this, and I truly enjoy it. So now I'm going to play with some blurs. I'm going to blur the background image first. And what I find when I do this is that I don't like the way that it makes the figure of my daughter look gaudy. It does. It actually makes it look gaudy and as if it's the center of the photograph. And I don't mean for it to be. I mean for the photograph and her figure to complement each other. So I go to a 5% blur, didn't really do anything, so I'm going to go to a very strong blur here, 25%. And what I found when I did this is it does way too much. So then I came up with the idea of changing the blur from the background to the figure of my daughter. And I didn't like that either, because it took all the focus off of her. And I actually came up with a compromise, whereas I did blur her a little bit, but I didn't blur the background at all. And you'll see here in just a second what kind of an effect that created, if you stick with me. I hope you do. Like I said, it turned out to be a pretty good image at the end of it that I felt was well worth the time it took me to create. The reason I'll open this and close it and open it again is sometimes my window hangs up for some reason. It locks. And if you have that problem, if you just minimize it, don't actually close it, but minimize that window and then open it up again, it usually works just fine. I apologize for this being so long, guys, but you know, it is what it is. It took me a while to find the whole feel that I was looking for, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Especially what I'm doing here is, if you'll notice, I went up to the layer where the figure my daughter is imposed, and now I'm just changing the opacity because I found it to be just a little too vibrant and a little too look at me. In this shade, so I've decided that I do want her to be just a flash of color in an otherwise black and white photo, but I don't want her to be such a vibrant, aggressive flash of color. I want her to be almost a vintage flash of color, almost as if she is a part of the era, but not necessarily a part of the scene. And I think that you'll see what I mean by that. Now I'm changing the blur on her. I didn't like her being blurred at 25 pixels, so we changed it to 5, and I think I actually end up settling on 10 because she just was too sharp, and she was too much attracting to the eye, I will say. So I think I settled for 10. Let's see if I did. And then I started changing her opacity. I changed her opacity. I changed the level of the color of her blouse. And I did a couple of other things before I finally came to a point where I was truly happy with it. And at the end of this, I'll post the copy of the actual picture again that I came up with, and I'll keep the Ken Burns zoom out of it so that you can just take a gander at it for 10 or 15 seconds and decide whether you like it or not. But even if you don't like it, I hope that you've learned a couple of techniques about the GIMP. GIMP is, again, my favorite graphics tool, and there's so much you can do with it, so many little bonuses and additions that it has that Photoshop doesn't have. I don't know why everybody that's got Photoshop should at least have the GIMP, and everybody that doesn't have Photoshop should definitely have the GIMP. I've never actually found anything that you can do in Photoshop that I can't emulate in the GIMP in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not exactly, but close enough that makes me happy. So here we are again playing with the opacity of the image of my daughter. I'm trying to get that red color just right so that it doesn't pop too much, but so that it pops enough that it draws my eye. So I'm going to try to blur her just a bit more. And we'll go from there. Again, changing the opacity a bit more. Still a bit too red for me. But we're getting closer. If you look, she's starting to fade into the background a bit more, yet she still stands out prominently in the picture. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking to produce a glimpse from the future into the past and vice versa. And I feel like I did that with this. You may disagree, and if you do, feel free to post that in the comments in the bottom. If you like this tutorial, hit that like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. But hopefully you'll see some value in this in one way or the other. And hopefully, like me, you'll be able to find some sort of therapy in the manipulation of your photography. We're almost to the end here, guys, I promise you. I'm going to go ahead and mess with the level again. I'm going to try to brighten that red just a touch more. I think I've got it a bit too drab. And I've got the opacity set too low at this point, but I know about, in my mind's eye, I know where the red is now once I've increased the opacity. And so I'm just going to increase it to the point to where it has created the effect that I'm looking for. I've already explained pretty much in depth to you what exactly I'm looking for. So as we increase the opacity just a little bit at a time now, once it catches up with what I felt like was going to be the statement I was looking for, then I'll stop. Okay, and then there we are for the most part. That is what I was trying to create. That's what I saw in my mind's eye. Not a great vibrant red that's going to jump out at you, but a very subtle red. Let's go ahead and take Caitlin out of the picture for a second. Let's take our vignette out and let's just see what the base looks like. Alright, there's Caitlin out. There's our vignette gone. And here's our base. This is the base photograph, desaturated. It's okay. It's appealing. But now let's add our vignette back in, and let's add our color splash back in the figure of Caitlin in the background. And there you are. A hauntingly beautiful scene that has some contrast in it. Something that hopefully will draw your eye. So that's my tutorial, guys, on how to do several things in the GIMP. I hope you enjoyed that. When you've got it like you want, you would flatten the image, and then it'll save it just like that as one image. And then you can go and export your file to wherever you want it. Save it as whatever file name you want. And you have created a work of art in the GIMP. In this instance, I'm going to call it caitlinbw.jpg because I'm saving it as a JPEG, and in GIMP you have to tell it what you want to save it as. I'm saving it as my desktop. I'm exporting. I will choose, I've got to flatten this again because that locked up. I'll choose 100% compression, and there you are. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Have a nice day.